Welcome to week number 3 of the mystery quilt, Happiness is Homemade. Today we'll be creating blocks 5 and 6, the gingerbread man and cooking pot. Today we'll go over the patterns for blocks 5 and 6. We'll also spend some creative time together fusing down the pieces for my blocks, and then also some time at the sewing machine as I stitch everything into place this week. If this is your first time on my channel, I'm so glad you're here. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you get notified when I make new videos. There's a whole playlist for this quilt series. I'll have a link for that down in the description box as well. And if you haven't joined me over on Facebook, I'll have all of my links for my social stuff in the description box as well. Also, before we get started this week, make sure you stay to the end of this video because I have a slideshow of your pictures. Yes, we're going to celebrate and take a look at the block sets you've been creating along with me at the end of this video. Now let's start by taking a look at this week's patterns. So let's start this week by going over the patterns. I think it's really good just to take a minute and go over what all this week entails, just like we've been doing in the last couple of videos. I think it's good if we're all on the same page and we prepare for what this week has to offer. So if you are playing along this week, when you go to Etsy, there will be 4 files to download this week. There's PDFs, 2 separate PDFs for the patterns, block 5 and 6, and then there's 2 SVGs, and the first one is for the gingerbread block, and the second is for the cooking pot. Aren't those super cute? I'm really excited to see what you do with this block. So the gingerbread block PDF is 2 pages, and the cooking pot is 1, 2, 3 pages. That's it. And so let's take a look at, let's do block 5 first. Of course, you have your measurements for your backgrounds. I'll show you what my pieces look like right here. I've already prepared the background and my sashing pieces. And then this is the tracing file for our applique. You'll cut 6 of these out for our block. And if you're using the SVG like I did this week, then it's all set up with 6 little gingerbread. You can arrange them in your program however you want to cut them out. But it took me less than 2 minutes to cut out 6 perfect gingerbread men. So yes, I used the SVG for the gingerbread man this week. And for the cooking pot, I just cut all of my applique by hand because they're really simple pieces and there wasn't a lot of them. So of course, here's your measurements for this block. I'll show you my pieces all lined up and ready to go. And then this is the applique pieces if you're going to do it by hand like I did this week. And of course, they're already mirror imaged and ready to go. One thing I wanted to note about these pieces is this is your cooking pot tracing template. I've labeled right up here, top of pot, so that when you fuse this down, it's set in the right direction. And so when you're tracing this piece, make sure to go ahead and mark the top of your pot, and I'll show you what I did as I start fusing the pieces down. So let's go ahead and move over to the pressing board. I have all of my pieces cut and we can start fusing everything together. Here we are with my 6 gingerbread men and my background fabric. You can see I'm going to be very non-technical when placing down my gingerbread men. I'm just going to measure over a hand width length away from the edge of the block, place down the 2 outer gingerbread men, and then just randomly place my gingerbread in between. Once I have them arranged in the manner that I think they look the cutest, I'm going to go ahead and fuse them into place. I think this gingerbread man lends to all kinds of creative possibilities with embellishments if you would like to do that. Next, we'll bring over the cooking pot piece, and you'll see I still have the paper on my pot portion, of this applique so that I can see which way goes up. All of my other pieces, I've removed the paper, and now we can just arrange them. For some of my applique blocks, I leave some separation between my pieces, and then sometimes I think it's fun to do some layering with the applique. So I think it's all up to you if you want to layer your pieces or add some separation like what you'll see in the actual picture block on the first page of the pattern. We'll fuse these pieces down into place, and then we're going to move over to the sewing machine. This week for my gingerbread men, I'm just going to keep it simple and do a single straight stitch all the way around my gingerbread men. I think a satin stitch would look so cute with these gingerbread men also. I'll bring you along as we stitch out a few of these together. I'm just jumping from one gingerbread man to the next. And then you can start thinking about if you want to leave your gingerbread men just like you see them here, or if you want to embellish them. How cute would these gingerbread men be on a little mug rug? I've decided for my gingerbread men, I would like to add a little bit of embellishment. So for the eyes, I chose stitch number 21. You can see that up on the screen. And I'm just going to add some little darts for the eyes with some yellow embroidery thread. I think it would be fun to play around with some stitches that you haven't ever experimented with on your machine. You could also do this by hand with some DMC thread. You could add buttons for eyes. That would be adorable. I'm going to give myself a little chalk line so that my eyes are lined up straight with one another. So this is what his eyes will look like. Next, I thought I would add a little bit of embellishment down his tummy. For this, I chose stitch number 55 on my machine. And I'll do 5 little starbursts right down his tummy. I do have some tearaway stabilizer underneath my block for this part of the process. I think it just keeps my fabric nice and unpuckering and my stitches stay nice and pretty. I think it all depends on what type of stitch and how dense it is, whether or not you need the extra stabilizer underneath of your fabric. How cute is that? So I'll bring you along and we'll stitch a couple of tummies. And the third thing I want to do with my gingerbread men is with stitch number 25, I'm going to stitch out a little mouth on each one of them. So we'll do this together and then move over to the cooking pot. Again, you could totally leave your gingerbread men just like you cut them out of gingerbread and leave them exactly the way they are. Or you could get really creative with the embellishment. It's all up to you. Next, we'll bring over the cooking pot block. I'm going to do some free motion work with some off-white embroidery thread and just stitch back and forth on the steam part of the applique. Now that we've finished up that portion, I'm going to switch my foot, and I'm going to use a stitch that I've never used on my machine, and that's stitch number 31. And I'll use that for the base of my cooking pot. We'll see how that looks. I think it's going to be adorable. I've never used this stitch before for applique, so I'm going outside of my comfort zone a little bit. We'll stitch out the cooking pot, and then I will switch over to a satin stitch for the handles and the base of my lid. As I start the satin stitch, I do have a piece of tearaway stabilizer underneath of the block now. The other stitch was sort of non-dense, and so I did not need to have a stabilizer to do the base of my cooking pot. However, I know that my machine doing the satin stitch really needs that extra support underneath of the fabric. I'll stitch out this first handle with you. Then I'll do the second handle off camera to save a little bit of time, and we'll move over to the base of the lid. Moving up to the lid because I decided to layer the little top knob on the top of my pot. I'm going to start on the base of my lid and then finish with the little circle up at the top, and that'll finish off perfectly. In this quilt series, I really like that we are focusing mostly on the stitch out and fusing down the pieces for the applique, because I know many of you are new to applique. And I think it's really helpful if you're a visual learner like I am to actually see all of the applique being stitched into place. So let's go add some sashing to our blocks for this week. For the gingerbread man, we will add the sashing to the bottom first, press that open, and then we will add the left and right sashing pieces. And this is my finished block. For the cooking pot, we're going to add the sashing to the bottom of the block again, press that open and trim. And then we're adding one sashing piece to the right of this block. And this is my finished cooking pot. I am so glad I got to spend some creative time with you this week. I've had so much fun playing with a different stitch in my machine. I hope you get really creative and maybe plug in one of those stitches on your machine that you've been wanting to try but haven't yet. Okay, as we close for this week, I'm going to share the slideshow for this week and celebrate with you and look at all of the creative, fun blocks that you've been making. Here's the email address. I'll also have it linked in the description box if you want to share your pictures. And by any chance, if you are watching this video a year from now and this series is already done, still love to see your blocks if you make this quilt. Email them to me so I can celebrate with you. Okay, I hope you have a fantastic week. Have fun creating. We'll see you next Friday. Bye.